The NFL could have played it super safe with the halftime show at the Super Bowl, but instead they've picked Bad Bunny. Some fans love it, while others, well, they're a little bit confused, so much so that an alternative halftime show featuring Kid Rock is now in the conversation. At the same time, Bad Bunny is coming off a huge Grammy win. His teaser video exploded online, and the NFL has the whole world watching. So today on Moneyball, we're not talking taste, we're talking strategy. So let's find out if Bad Bunny is good business for the NFL.
And now it's time.
It's time.
It's time for
Moneyball.
Moneyball.
Are you familiar with the story of Moneyball?
My guest is Crissy Whalin, a long-time culture watcher with deep experience in pop and talk radio, including time on the legendary Rick Dees show at KISS in Los Angeles. Total legend. She knows her music, media, and audience attention, which makes her absolutely perfect for this conversation here today. Crissy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scotty. How are you?
Yeah, great. We're old friends, but so good to have you on my first episode here today. Hey, quick one to start. On a scale from Google Translate to fully fluent, how is your Spanish?
My Spanish is what I call, I took it in high school because that's very common in the US. My Spanish is panic Spanish. So like when I'm traveling in countries where I need Spanish, it comes. Then I'm trying to speak French because I'm living in France and all I can think of are Spanish words. So it's like, I think I probably sound like one of those language apps that doesn't know what it is. And I'm just like spitting out like words. I'm like, wait, what? So it's pretty good. The thing about Spanish for me is because I've learned it since I was a kid, it's very easy to understand it once you learn some of the main verbs and just main, things that you would need to know. But I definitely have get yourself out of jail Spanish level. So.
Well, that's good. And there's been a lot of noise around this choice, and a lot of it's based around language, and we'll get into that. I've heard that he's not American enough, that I don't know the songs. Why not a rock act? A lot of the pushback has been around language, and I've even heard some players quoted. There was an Athletic article in the last couple of days, anonymous quotes, of course, where they were saying that the NFL should have chosen an American artist. Last time I checked, Puerto Rico is part of the United States. When you hear that criticism, Crissy, what does it tell you about the audience and the culture around the NFL as a national sport these days?
Well, I think it's a good media story. I don't actually think it's reflective. I think, you and I have worked in media for so long that we've seen kind of the really obvious shift of what is negative or, shocking is what is the headline, not what the stats are, because the stats would show the exact opposite to what you're saying. Like they're not quoting anyone anonymously that isn't like, I'm a huge fan of Bad Bunny, which if you look at Spotify and you look at social media and you look at, album sales and these kinds of touring sales, like the stats would show you that Bad Bunny is the perfect choice. He's just won Spotify's biggest artist in the world. Again, he beats out Taylor Swift consistently. And she's, one of the top selling touring acts in the last 20 years. So I think that, to take a couple of quotes from a couple of racist football players that won't even give you their name is pretty effing weak, if you ask me, and not actually reflective. The other thing that's, I think, interesting is making it about language is silly. We come from a country that is got no native language that is the same, right? Like Native Americans all have their own unique language. And the Spanish were the first to conquer and settle in the U.S. So Florida is a Spanish name. San Francisco, where the Super Bowl will be, is a Spanish name.
The irony is just delicious, isn't it?
It's beautiful in our big, beautiful country, as our ridiculous leader would call it. But, I just think the headlines sell and most kids in America take Spanish as their second language in school. It's a required subject in school. I don't really think that it's the language that bothers people. It's the time that we're in that's so politically, divisive, and the media being more divisive than it's ever been. Because if you just look at the stats and you just look at what's making money, Bad Bunny is a bankroll. He's just a bankroll.
He's 100%. But the agenda is getting pushed, and we'll look at the business strategy in a sec. But the agenda is getting pushed because I'm hearing there's an alternate halftime show that's going to be fronted by Kid Rock. Are you kidding?
Well, that's Turning Point, which is Turning Point. Most people will have heard was the late podcaster Charlie Kirk's foundation.
Who do they think is going to watch this, though? I mean, all
They
of the eyeballs are going to be on
they
the
don't
Super
care
Bowl
because
halftime show
they don't care. It's literally just to get more eyes and a little bit, to get more media attention back on Turning Point. Because
themselves.
unfortunately, like whether you liked Charlie Kirk or not, he was the moneymaker. His viewpoint, I mean, his wife has tried to sort of take over the reins on that a little bit, but she is not him. But I mean, and Kid Rock's such a effing loser. No one cares. I mean, like, no one asked Kid Rock to do the fucking Super Bowl, so it's like it's just kind of silly. I think it's a good headline for the week, but I don't imagine that anyone who isn't just deeply racist and stupid isn't going to tune in. It's like,
Or who likes Kid Rock?
does anyone?
Does
I mean,
anybody like Kid Rock?
the
I don't know.
only place I could think that Kid Rock still works is like maybe a strip club, and God bless him for that. Like he's entitled. It's free speech, but like the only place I imagine hearing Kid Rock these days is literally a strip club or like I don't know, his cover of Sweet Home Alabama, like on
Yes.
a boat with a bunch of dudes with, beer bellies and like, that don't like their lives. I don't know. Like it's just
Yeah.
he's so ridiculous. And the irony of Kid Rock, if you want to really like peel back that layer, is he's a dude who's a white dude who came out as a white rapper to
Yes.
like appropriate black culture. And now
True.
he's acting like black and brown culture is not okay.
That's
Cool,
so
man.
true. And it's funny, right? So let's take a look at. There's obviously been a lot of criticism, and but you just have to look at the numbers, right? The numbers are huge. You talked about Spotify. He obviously won a Grammy last week, but the teaser that the NFL put out and the Bad Bunny put out for this show did ridiculous numbers, like it broke all sorts of records. Think about the NFL. What do you think matters most to them? Is it being liked or being impossible to ignore? What do you think they're trying to do here?
Well, the interesting thing is you have to remember with the NFL halftime show since 2020, so it was Jay-Z and Rock Nation, which is Jay-Z's record label and production company. They hired him on a 5-year deal. I think it was like $25 million or something like that to book and build the Super Bowl halftime show because they had a series of kind of low ratings and flops, despite some of the teams were some of the biggest teams. Like obviously you're not really going to ever catch lightning in a bottle where Travis Kelce is dating Taylor Swift and they're in the Super Bowl and that kind of thing. That doesn't
And
happen.
she said she's not going to do it.
No, I don't think Taylor Swift would ever. The only way I see Taylor Swift being in the Super Bowl is just showing up as a surprise act because she doesn't need to do it, right? So like
Agree.
if it was like, Post Malone, she could surprise people and be in Post Malone's Super Bowl, but she's not going to do it. But the funny thing is like that complaining about the Super Bowl halftime show has almost been a cultural phenomenon since like they kind of used up every old or iconic act, right? So they kind of almost ran out of them at a certain point. And then they were trying to say, well, we want to book acts that are more youthful and like cooler. And they had booked In Sync with Aerosmith and Britney Spears. Remember that show was all three of those together. And that was kind of fun.
Yes.
They had the Janet Jackson one where her nipple came out with Justin Timberlake, and that was a whole controversy. Was that a bad controversy? Kind of, because then, like, literally in that, I guess, like, cable companies cut ties and this and that was, but as you know, unless at this stage you're on the Epstein files, no publicity is bad publicity.
That's true.
It's just the truth, so.
Yep.
I mean, and Jay-Z is a very, very smart businessman, right? He is a billionaire in the music industry. It's literally what he does for a living. And so when they brought him in, the biggest Super Bowl halftime show, and the reason the Super Bowl halftime show is what it is because Michael Jackson in the early 90s, sponsored by Pepsi, right?
Yes.
Made the Super Bowl halftime show a thing. Prior to that, it wasn't really a thing like it is how we know it sort of in the last, 30 years or 20 something years. But it's like Michael Jackson, and that was like 130 million viewers around the world because it's Michael Jackson. And there hasn't really been an artist like Michael Jackson ever since Michael Jackson. But if we're going to be talking about race and things like that, I mean, Michael Jackson's black. And then after you have that, you've had like acts like the Miami Sound Machine, who were like the 1980s, Gloria Estefan, like that. They were bringing Latino culture through Miami and through Cuba. into
100%.
music, right? So you
100%.
have them being a part of this. They actually even own part of the Miami Dolphins, the Gloria Estefan and her husband, along with
Yes.
Jennifer Lopez, who I think divested. But like, then you've got like acts like, I think if you're talking about music aficionados, people like will tell you, and I'm of the opinion, Prince was the best Super Bowl halftime show that ever existed. Like, you don't top Prince, right? So like, almost you've peaked in the Super Bowl when you've had Prince. And of course, now Prince is no longer with us, so he can never come back. But you've had iconic people like Tom Petty and the Rolling Stones and Aerosmith and Bruce Springsteen. And, you do at some point, Paul McCartney, you run out of that.
Big
And then
names.
the zeitgeist also changes, right? So like, whilst Paul McCartney might be a top touring act and he sells out tickets, the people he's selling out tickets to are literally the people who are left, who are just like higher end Gen X, older Gen X, which I think is I'm 79, so that would be my generation. And then baby boomers, and anyone straggling left, like my dad, who's like in their 80s. You know what I mean?
Let's go to this decision then. So why has Jay-Z done this? Bad Bunny is not a nostalgia play. He is culturally hot. He's the first Spanish language artist to win Album of the Year at the Grammys.
Yep.
How valuable to the NFL is that relevance and that cutting edge compared to, say, getting, I don't know, Katy Perry to do it?
Well, they have had Katy Perry. She was a flop, remember?
Sure, yeah,
So,
but
yeah.
somebody like someone like that, another. I mean, to me, she's now a nostalgia act. Anybody her age or older is going to be a nostalgia act. Why are they going down this path? Why is Jay-Z
Because,
pursuing
quite
this?
frankly, it worked, right? So, like last year, they had Kendrick Lamar, and that was equally as controversial as
It
this
was.
decision, right? Remember, we had this kind of same context. Well, the thing about Kendrick Lamar is that he surpassed Michael Jackson's Super Bowl in terms of viewership. So you got over 133.5 million viewers watching the halftime show for Kendrick
That's just
Lamar.
in the US as well.
And that's just in the US.
Yeah.
So, and it's not like Jay-Z didn't try the nostalgia play. He did, and it was successful. He had Shakira and J-Lo when they were well past selling their prime amount of records. And then he had, he did the one that I loved, which was the throwback to 90s hip hop, particularly with the West Coast lean in it, having, Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and Eminem come in and 50 Cent come in there and Mary J. Blige. He had that like 90s hip hop thing, which was funny for me being in the Gen X sort of position, because I think
It was great.
It was wonderful, but I was still at that stage. Like, I remember that happening a couple years ago, and older people, boomers, still being like, "Who is this?" And then younger people being like, "This is cool. Like, I don't really know them." And then you could argue the same thing for Usher, who we also booked recently, right? Usher was like very much Gen X millennials were like, "Hell yeah!" Like, I remember my sister and I were like, "I'm gonna
No,
be."
didn't they go, "Yeah, yeah"?
Yeah, no, not like, my sister and I were just imagining ourselves drunk at the club, which was great. That is nostalgia. It's not really about nostalgia that is the root cause of that controversy. It's just racism, right? Like, it's not that, because Jay-Z has booked nostalgic acts, but when he booked the controversial, most popular Black rap, hip hop artist who doesn't mince words and doesn't do really poppy things, though he has collabed with pop people, it proved to work. So whether or not it was a combination of, not only did Jay-Z do that because Kendrick Lamar was popular and it was undeniable, he did it because it reflected the players who play in the games, right? And the same thing will go for Bad Bunny. While we have a couple of anonymous quotes of players who don't like Bad Bunny, if you were to go through their Spotify, the majority of the players in the NFL, I'm going to guarantee you that Bad Bunny is on their Spotify. So I don't think it's a risk.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. And I actually, before recording this tonight, spent half an hour listening to his music, and I just kind of think, who couldn't love Bad Bunny? Like, I don't speak Spanish, but his music is so fun.
Yeah.
And I'm here in Australia. You're in Europe. I'm interested in your perspective on how this decision will land outside of America, because I think we all view it very differently to how people in the US will see it. And also, there's obviously this push by the NFL into other markets too. They're talking about bringing a game to Melbourne here. I know they've been to Brazil and Germany. They play at the Tottenham Stadium in London. How do you think this decision, and I guess the fallout from it in a way, reflects outside of the US compared to how people see it in the home country there?
Well, you're right. US is The U.S. football scene is definitely like expanding its territory. The Saints and the Cleveland Browns will come play here in Paris in October, which is super exciting. Obviously, the Saints will, because it's New Orleans and New Orleans is actually French. Well, that's a very appropriate thing. And I don't know if you knew this, but in Germany, they actually have like a Sunday NFL ticket show, and the NFL is quite popular there nationally.
Yeah,
And so
right.
that's what, yeah, you've seen obviously the games go to London and that's been pretty popular, but they actually come to Germany as well. And those games have been very successful and the popularity rises. And the thing I think what's interesting about Bad Bunny, and I think what, not to make anyone sound old or fuddy-duddy, but like if you are listening and you're paying attention to what young people across the world are listening to, reggaeton, which is the type of music that Bad Bunny does, reggaeton has been a part of culture internationally for the last 25 plus years. I mean, if you're in America, and I don't think a lot of people outside of America understand this about American radio, we have Spanish radio, and it's some of the top billing and top rating stations across the country. So the idea that it isn't American at all is ridiculous, when actually Spanish radio is like one of the most profitable radios. We have Spanish news channels, and we have Spanish radio channels. Reggaeton, you remember back like in sort of the late 90s with Ricky Martin and Enrique Iglesias and Daddy Yankee, who is a reggaeton act, and Jennifer Lopez. All of a sudden, we had these Latin artists becoming the most popular in the genre, and then we created the Latin Grammys around them. But they only just amplified what was already occurring in the culture there. And that is in France. If I'm listening to kids play their speakers on the bikes and stuff, it's reggaeton. It is Bad Bunny.
Yeah, and to me, music's international, right? Like, good music is good music, hands down. And I think that's what he's going to deliver at the Super Bowl
Absolutely.
this year, no doubt. Let's talk advertising and marketing, because having both been in the media and you're still there, obviously advertising dollars are super important, and it doesn't get much bigger than the Super Bowl. A lot of people just watch the Super Bowl for the ads each year as well as the halftime show now.
Sure.
It's super important. It's super entertaining. But if you're a brand spending 8 figures on the Super Bowl, does a halftime entertainment choice sort of help or hinder you? Do you think they want to be brands that are advertising there want to be engaged in that space, depending on who the artist is or not?
I mean, yeah, and the cool thing is about sort of gauging it. First of all, a lot of that stuff's bedded in, and I don't think that like, Frito-Lay potato chips is gonna have a problem selling fucking Frito-Lays, part of my French, whether it's Bad Bunny or some old dude with a guitar, right? But like, because that's just like some of the stuff that is like culturally baked into the experience
Or
of
Bud
the Super
Light and
Bud
all
Light,
that stuff.
Pizza Hut. No, none of
Yeah.
that's gonna be, it doesn't matter who it is. They're part of that cultural piece of the Super Bowl.
I mean, we're going to see Bad Bunny in advertising, do you think? Could that be possible?
I'm sure he'll pop up. I mean, he's already a pretty sponsored type of artist, right? All these artists have already deals, and I would assume that he's got some sort of deal baked in anyway, that he brings with him a level of cachet and brands that want to work with him that are then going to buy ads in the Super Bowl, or maybe put him in ads in the Super Bowl. I mean, we don't know. That's the surprise. That's kind of the fun of the Super Bowl ads. But I mean, when you had J-Lo during the Super Bowl, she was in ads. And when you had when she married Ben Affleck, then she and Ben Affleck were doing Super Bowl ads for Dunkin' Donuts. So the ads themselves tend to follow cultural trends, right? So it's not as if advertisers are going to go, "Oh, this is controversial. It's Bad Bunny." What advertiser doesn't want to sell to this huge? First of all, to the numbers that show that outside of the Spanish-speaking world, English-speaking world loves this man. Period. End of story.
Percent and leveraging that credibility that he has with his own audience, but just the cool that he brings. He brings swag, he brings cool.
He's handsome. He's funny. Women
He
are
is.
attracted to this man. And so, like, it's the same way that women were watching, men. There was this, like, thing with Taylor Swift where they were like, "Get her out of there. Stop panning to her in the crowd." And the NFL was like, "Actually, we need this shit right now.
Yeah.
Like, we need her. Could she be in another Super Bowl?" And I'm like a 49ers fan, so like she's devastated my team because I don't think
Yeah.
anything could have beat that moment and that energy and vibe of like her and Travis Kelsey and kissing on the Super Bowl field after they won and they beat the 49ers. It was just like, that's what those moments. I mean, Super Bowl is entertainment. Bad Bunny, he dated Kendall Jenner. He's like, women
Well, he's hosting
like
Saturday
this.
Night Live. Like he's
His Saturday Night Live is the highest rated Saturday Night Live. Like, how are we arguing against this man? He's spoken English. He's funny.
100%. To me, he's proper crossover. He is culturally sort of cross borders, cross language, cross culture. It doesn't matter to me. And I think it doesn't matter to a lot of people. Do you think he'll surprise people? Do you think he might win some people over?
Yeah, I think he will. And I think, and this is so funny, but I say it every year at the Super Bowl. I feel like I'm just always like, I feel like people just want to complain, but also
Yeah.
like, it's just like part of like, let me get on Facebook and tell you what I think. And I'm just like, who gives a shit? You have 500 friends who already know how you feel, like
100%. But I
you
also think there's like a less quiet majority now where people are also like happy to say, I think that's cool. Like I'm going to come out and say this is cool because I like it. And I think people are less worried about being criticized for that. The halftime show, it's such a big funnel. You said it before, 130 whatever million people watching it just in the US alone. It's supported by Apple Music, and Bad Bunny's already had a really big bump in streaming numbers since the announcement, which is awesome. What do you think this will do for his career and for his business? Business Bad Bunny after Monday, after the Super Bowl. What happens with him?
I mean, the funniest part is he has the most to lose out of everybody, right? It's not about the advertisers, not about the teams. Like everyone's gonna watch the damn Super Bowl, so he's got to turn out what is gonna. Because unfortunately, with all this pressure on him, like Kendrick Lamar almost didn't have any pressure in a way because he is kind of like, I don't care what you think of me attitude. And there's something about Bad Bunny that's a little bit less, I don't care what you think of me. He's just more like, I'm doing my thing. But now there's a lot of pressure on him. And I think he will turn it out in terms of like what he's got to gain. The sky's the limit. He's already invested in sports. He's like a lot of celebrities these days where he has investments in sports teams and sports management companies, just like Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman and Jennifer Lopez and even Anne Hathaway. I don't even think people know how many
Is
celebrities
she
are.
women's football?
Yes.
Yeah.
These there's Reese Witherspoon. These people have invested in sports teams. Like the big joke was Stephen A. Smith, who's one of the biggest sportscasters in the U.S., and he was like, "God damn, if we just let Donald Trump buy a football team, he wouldn't be the freaking president." Like he decided he was going to run for president because he was pissed off that he couldn't get to buy a football team in America because they wouldn't let him in. So he's like, "Fuck you guys, I'm going to go be the president. I'll show you." And he's like, "Could we not have just let him buy the Giants?" So that's like one of my favorite hot takes ever of American politics and the Super Bowl.
He's brilliant. Stephen A. Smith for president next time around. He's fantastic.
Seriously, so funny. And then also at this point, why not?
It almost seems like the obvious choice, right? Like we're over here. Let's go over here now. Yeah.
Like, why not? You don't even have to have credentials anymore.
Not anymore.
It's like, I remember people being like, Oprah should do it. And people are like, she has no credentials. And I'm like, well, I think the time is past for having credentials. So
it's so weird. Like my early career, I worked as a political reporter in Australian politics. And back then there was just so much rigor and checks and balances around what people did and didn't say. And now people just say whatever they want. But can I just pick you up on what you're talking about there? Because I do think it's really interesting. One of the references that I had here was, Bad Bunny's ownership of a basketball team in Puerto Rico. He manages athletes. And like you were saying, there are lots of actors, musicians, other sports people buying into sports brands. Alpine Formula One team's a great example. The list is it's really long, but Ryan Reynolds, Travis Kelsey, golfer Rory McIlroy.
Yep.
Former Manchester United and Chelsea footballer Juan Mata. They're all investors and the list is much longer. Tell me what you think about the era we're kind of moving into here. There's obviously this kind of mishmash and crossover from people don't have to stay in their lane anymore. You don't have to just do business. You don't have to just do sport or music. Are we moving into this new era where the musicians and the artists are becoming part of sport and sports people are becoming part of sort of culture and art?
Well, I think that's always been a connective tissue to a certain degree. I mean, we were sort of like Zephyr and I, my son and I were riffing off of why do people always complain about who does the Super Bowl halftime? Like who could do it? And there's so much link between when you go to a football game, a cricket game, a soccer game, a basketball game, the music that's played, right? Like there's DJs that are hired to play music in these sports games, right? That there's the clips that are used, the movie clips, and like Will Ferrell clips that you'll see from every movie he's ever done that are played throughout the games. And so it's all entertainment. And I think it's sort of naturally all meshes together. And if you think about the White Stripes Seven Nation Army, that opening riff, you
Yeah.
have people in African countries going na na na
Da,
na na
da,
na.
da, da.
No idea who Jack White is. No idea that that's the White Stripes. No idea that song is called Seven Nation Army, but it is iconically part of sports fabric now. You just
There's a sorry to cut you off. There's
No.
a violin player at Melbourne Victory Games in Melbourne, an A-League sports team, a soccer team, and that's the song that she plays, and the crowd goes absolutely wild for it.
You
And
can
and
yell
th-
it out
there's
your
this
window.
crossover.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can just open your window and go dun, 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 and people go dun.
Da, da, yeah.
It's the same as like We Will Rock You. Like in the 80s when I was growing up, like We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions was the song that was played at the Super Bowl after the team won. And then all the montage footage was We Will Rock You into We Are the Champions. So I think music and entertainment and like movies are about sports. Some of the top grossing films of all times are about sport. So it's such a natural thing. And I think actors and sports as athletes, professional athletes, all kind of like merging in and like putting their money. These guys make so much money, Scotty. Like
Yeah,
they have
yeah.
money to burn. And I would rather see a young man invest, a young NFL player who's had a quarter, half, $1 trillion contracts or whatever they're getting in MLB now. You're making $500 million. If you're investing that into other sports teams and you want to invest into a record label, like who gives a shit? It's your money kind of. And it seems like an obvious thing. I'm personally like a fan of Zephyr and I's kind of thing is like, we would like to see more cities, people in their local cities be able to like own parts of the teams. Like they do a lot of that in Germany.
Yeah, it's European football is a big part of that. Germany is huge for that. You're right.
Yeah. But I mean, if somebody's going to own it, it might as, and if you watch like the celebrity owners that own things, when you've got Magic Johnson owning part of the Dodgers, now he's an NBA player, but he's also an athlete, someone who's experienced management. He's experienced what it's like to advocate for athletes and these kinds of things. That's not like out of the scope of him being a good owner, partner of a sports team because they know the business. Jay-Z owns part of the Nets. And I don't see that it's a problem. They have so much money. What are we going to do with it? And we don't tax them.
Yeah, that's right. But I also think I do think social media has been a big part of this. Like the pre-game montage, back in the day in the 90s, the 80s on TV was the big kind of glamorization of that on-field contact and competition. But now with not every league, every team having their own content team, and they're producing dozens of pieces a week, they're looking for ways to connect, obviously, but also to glamorize what they're doing. And it's the on-field and off-field footage with music that often really brings those moments to life. And I do think social media has had a role to play for leagues, for teams, and now, for individual athletes as well to express themselves, to entertain in a way that they were never able to before. And I think that is driving more of that cultural change and connection and players then thinking about with all the money that they've made, what do I do with this? How can I branch out this entertainment platform that I have into products, into other teams, into other business interests that aren't just like, I'm going to buy a couple of houses, one in Miami and one in New York. And like, that's me with my investments. They want to do more these days.
I don't want to blow it, like these are not people who were trained business people usually. So, LeBron James certainly set a tone for what you do with your billions. And so did Jay-Z, right? Like they're self-made billionaires that wanted to, be examples and set examples for Black people in their industries, which is both sports and entertainment are the same. I think it's smart because any attention that gets given to that too I think just from a cultural point of view is really can be potentially very inspiring to people who look up to them, right? So, and it's, you know, I think there as we move towards AI and there's going to be less and less jobs available for people, like everything will kind of move to what is content on social media, and like there's maybe we'll have robots playing football and whatever, but at least for
No, come on.
at least for a while, I think it's going to still be a form of entertainment that is like a human connection that still brings in advertising dollars and boosts the economy and local communities, and I think that that's a positive thing.
Yeah, like news, sports, and music are like three things that we could probably never really live without, and hopefully never get taken over by AI. Now, before the halftime show gets taken over by AI, I do want to throw out a couple of ideas that I have for
Okay.
future Super Bowl halftime entertainment, and I want to get your take on these. I've kind of broken them down into like a couple of different categories. There's obviously a million choices you could make, and we've talked about some of the ones that have done it in the past, and some that maybe will never do it. But I've thought about it this way. First up, I've got some pop choices. I think so. Like my choices are Sabrina Carpenter, who I think would be
Mhm.
great. Dua Lipa from the UK is she's got those big arena shows. I think she could really put on a great show. Or Harry Styles, who is sort of globally popular. I don't know how he'd go down with the conservative NFL kind of old schoolers, but they're my pop choices. What do you make of those?
Sabrina Carpenter's awesome. I think
Me too.
she's a little bit overtly sexual, like in a way that would rub a lot of people the wrong way, even though I
But
feel
she's playful.
she rubs a lot of people the right way, I'm sure,
Yeah.
particularly with the male crowd. Um, I know Dua Lipa sells a lot of stadium tours and stuff. She's almost to me though, like I think she's really big, but it's almost for her, I still think she's gonna just sell tickets to women and not necessarily be that kind of zeitgeist. It was like you remember how Robbie Williams, like he was like he's a worldwide act, but he never quite hit it in the US in terms of touring like that. I think that that's a little bit yeah, I don't Harry Styles, I mean, I think he's awesome. I obviously he's got a new album to push pretty soon. Or now
Maybe they
he's
could all do
releasing
it together.
they could do it together and it could be like a pop thing. I'm very much more like it's Post Malone with a
Yep.
lot of like surprise acts. Like I think
Yes.
because he's transcended hip hop and now he's in country, but he's in Americana country. He's not in like, but he's also doing things where he's in Americana country, so he which means that like he's more alternative country, so he could do something with a Willie Nelson, who is a heritage American act, right? And then he could also bring in a Morgan Wallen, who really appeals to like that MAGA country right wing
It
thing.
sure
But
does.
then he could even actually have Taylor Swift come
Yes.
in and do their big Fortnite song together. So I think that's more what you'll see. But again, Jay-Z, as long as he's doing the booking, it's not going to be anything that probably it hasn't been road tested, the stats haven't been looked at, and that Jay-Z isn't going to put his stamp of approval of my name's behind this. I'm cool. I'm the tastemaker. This is what you're getting because that's why they hired him.
100%. The country artists that I had on my list were him, as well as I had Luke Combs, Lainey Wilson, and Shabuzi. I think I don't know if it's them together. I don't know if any of them could hold it on their own. Probably not, but I kind of like those artists. Justin Bieber is one that I kind of popped up and I thought could collab with a bunch of different artists and make quite a cool show because he's done songs with other artists, but I feel like he could also just have others come and collab on his songs, and it could be quite a really cool performance.
I think that Biebs is the one who has the most to lose there. He's got to look cool in a group of superly macho buff men on that field. The Biebs is gonna have to come out.
Cares? I don't think he cares. I reckon he could carry it. I also have for just a really big show and out there, and I don't know how this sits with some of the NFL crowd, but Lady Gaga, I think
Well,
she's
she's done the opening song, right?
yeah, and
Yeah.
but I feel like she's just got such a great back catalogue, and she's one of those artists I could see coming back and doing it again. And then I don't know, I feel like we haven't had rock for a while, like a proper rock band. I could be wrong. You would know the back
Well,
catalogue
it's
of
just that rock is
Halftime.
not popular. Like rock is, I mean, it's just statistically right now not popular.
I
So
can't see Jay-Z booking like
well, he
a sort of
booked
an old
Green
school.
Day. Green Day's going to open the show, right? As all this backlash about Bad Bunny, give us a rock band. And he was like, all right, F you, I'm going to give you the biggest selling rock band there is right now in the last 20 years, which is also a punk rock band that thinks that the attitude that you have effing sucks. So here we go. You're going to get American Idiot to open up the Super Bowl, which I think is, but there is a lot. I mean, like Zeph and I were beating around the White Stripes, and I'm like, Jack White would tear the roof off of any
100%.
Superdome, but you would have to really pepper that. And I don't think Jack White would be so narcissistic to not pepper it with contemporary acts that would want to come and collab with him as well. That's not traditionally what he does, but I think just like Jack White, and he's never going to get Meg White to come back out. She's not even accept her Rock and Roll Hall of Fame award, but I think something like that could be fun, and that could work. I mean, Usher was kind of a flop. It wasn't as much of a pull, so I think that Jay-Z is going to be very careful now of what he does, and we don't even know who Bad Bunny's going to bring out. Like,
No, that's right.
maybe you think it's Drake. What if he decides he wants to bring out some big country act that like just loves him? You know, we don't know.
I'd love to see it, and I think that's part of the surprise that we'll get to look forward to over the next few days, and to enjoy that show. I mean, my rock acts that I'd picked, I can never see getting booked for this, and I've seen them all. They're all great live. Foo Fighters, The Killers, and Metallica. I'm sure they'd never play together on a stage, but I'd like to see it.
I've seen Metallica many, many, many times. I think that like of all of those guys, Metallica rips so hard. And of course, like with the songs coming back that were in like Stranger Things and that kind of fun, like that was the first time Zephyr really was like, oh, Metallica. And I was like,
Wow. Yeah.
dude, I'm from the Bay Area. Metallica's my hometown band. I was at the Metallica Guns N' Roses show where people were being cut and fainted and all, you know, it was like all that controversy. But I think the thing about Metallica too is like they just don't have enough relevance in the last 20 years that like if they did something, they would have to do a collab. The thing that's like really interesting, Scotty, is that like I worked in pop radio, having come and love rock radio. You know, I love rock radio. My ex-husband and I did a rock hip hop format test together. So we know that rock and hip hop sit really well with men.
Yes.
Which is the majority of the demographics. But the Super Bowl, it transcends sort of like just gender, even though like this constant argument is that this is for a bunch of, you know, what I call brotards. It's not.
It has to be broad appeal. It's got to be broad appeal.
Yeah, that's not enough to make any money anymore, right? Even the idea that men dominate social media that's not enough of a grab. This is just a gut feeling based on a lot of instinct and a little bit of knowledge in politics. The average dude that has a Chevy truck that has a MAGA flag flying off the back of it doesn't vote in America. They like to say they love that guy, but they didn't actually go out and register to vote and stand in line for 2 hours because that's a pain in the ass. You know, like that's not easy to do. It's easier to be a dick on social media and, you know, have some lonely time in your basement because no one wants to hang out with you, being a freaking troll. And that is good for the algorithm, but it's not reflective of like what people do when they buy things. So like, you know, I think
that's
like
the contrast, isn't it?
That's the contrast. Having Taylor Swift proved that if Taylor Swift is in the NFL atmosphere and in that moment in time, it brought more people into the NFL. Undeniable.
Absolutely.
It's just, you can't deny the statistics, the hype around it, the social media trending, the viewers that tuned in. So like for all the nonsense and the negativity about certain things and that it's, you know, yes, it's still male dominated, but like that's changing, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's the same in our football here in Australia, and you see it in Europe as well.
I mean, I wanted to watch AFL as soon as I got there. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Hot dudes in short shorts? What is this?
You might not have caught up on this. There's actually a story in the last 6 or 12 months. Sydney Swans games now are like proper places where people go to, like women go to meet men.
I think
It's
that's
a real
amazing.
thing.
I think, too, the one thing that is universal about sport, even if it's controversy or allegiance to whatever, and I truly believe this as a world traveler and as somebody who's lived in multiple countries, sport is something that unites people. And I really think that we have to remember that. It's very easy to sell discord, but like the truth of the matter is that if I go to Australia and I try to strike up a conversation in Melbourne and I tell people that I'm a Carlton supporter, immediately we've had a connection, right? It's like it is a connecting thing. You don't have to like the same team. You don't have to like, it's actually more fun when you're getting into sort of the rivalries. And I think music is really similar, right? It's not about Bad Bunny being Puerto Rican, which by the way is American. It's really about like, oh, I love his music. And did you know that, like, hey, remember Gloria Estefan? Like, when my mom could be like, well, I know about Latino music because I loved Gloria Estefan in the 80s. And, it's kind of like those are the connective tissues that we kind of have to get back to in the world because, like, there is enough shit, there is enough discord. And we really have to be cognizant that that's on us. It's ruining our own psyche while behind the wheels, they're just like, cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. And I don't know that that's good for us.
Yeah, and look, I think for us as fans and consumers of sports and sports media, at the end of the day, we take it seriously, and political and media commentators will, take it apart and say what they want. But it's sport's fun at the end of the day, and this podcast is about the business of sport, and there's always some serious side to it. But as consumers and fans as well, Bad Bunny is just going to put on a great show, and we're all going to have a lot of fun watching the halftime show at the Super Bowl. I'm sure you will too. Crissy, thanks so much for joining me on Moneyball.
Thank you, Scotty. That was so much fun. Go Bad Bunny!
Moneyball.
So when you strip it all back, this isn't really a story about taste in music. It's a story about relevance. The NFL didn't choose Bad Bunny to make everybody happy. They did it because he represents where culture and attention is right now. Younger, global, and moving fast. The man is super cool. His music is a lot of fun. And whether you like it or not, you can't really ignore the business logic. It is a great choice, and it is good business for the NFL. And that's what Moneyball is about, looking past the noise and trying to understand the decisions behind the big moments in sport. This is episode 1 of this brand new podcast, and there is plenty more coming. Media deals, leagues expanding into new markets, players as brands, and the business calls that shape what we all end up watching. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe on YouTube or follow wherever you get your podcasts. And you can find us on Instagram as well. Just search @Moneyball_show. And if there's a deal, a league, or a controversy, or a big sporting decision that you think we should unpack here next on the show, send it through. This show is just getting started. I'm Scott Keenan. This is Moneyball, the business of sport. And until next time, follow the money.